This episode of Own the Grey is brought to you by I Am. Discover your unique talents, realize your potential, and align to your path. Take the first step to uncover your life purpose by visiting debrajones.ca/courses. Would you live life differently if you didn't fear death? None of us know when it'll be our time and carry the burden of the fear of dying without realizing that there's a way to lift that burden and free yourself to live life more fully today. Get ready to be empowered. Our guest today has more than 40 years of experience in the human services field, with a PhD in family relations and human development and extensive shamanic training. She's a fierce advocate for peace and freedom for all beings, passionate about teaching us to recognize our place in the world. Please welcome my teacher and mentor, Alison Normore. Hi, Alison. Thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Debra. It's a pleasure to be here.
Today, we're talking about a subject that most people are uncomfortable thinking about, but keep listening because we hope to dispel the fear and bring peace and empowerment to you instead. And if you haven't heard about dying consciously, you're in for a treat. Alison, most people I know think about death as a morbid subject. They fear it and they focus instead on avoiding death at all costs. And thankfully, my training with you has taught me that we're doing a disservice to ourselves by taking this approach. What can you share about that?
Yeah, well, you are so right. I mean, our culture today has a great fear and is in denial about the end of life. And we have a medical system and the technology and the knowledge now to be able to extend life, way beyond what we used to be able to do. So we've got this medicalization, if that's a word, of death and the institutionalizing of it. I mean, if you think back, it's not that long ago that when people died, we cared for them at home, got the body ready. And it was very much a family and a community process, end of life. Whereas now we shuffle our elders, off into homes. And, we just have disconnected. We've become very disconnected from our elders and those who are dying. And we've given over care into these institutions. And so all of that feeds into the discomfort. I mean, it's a reflection of the discomfort that we feel. And yet it's such a precious time. And people who work in hospice and work with those who are dying, I mean, without exception, will talk about how precious and how spiritual and how fulfilling and satisfying that work is. So there's a lot to remember and to reclaim. And my experience has been through having a chronic health condition since I was a child, and through my own shamanic training and spiritual awakening, of realizing that we're more than a physical body. I mean, I know that now through those experiences of, near death for myself. And there are many, many people. I mean, Raymond Moody, many years ago, brought this to the public attention with his case studies on near-death experiences. And you don't have to go very far to find these stories. Many credible people have written their own accounts now and are teaching us, reminding us that there is more to life than, after death. Life does continue. So that, yes, there's, when we're in denial and we're pushing that away and trying to disconnect from the fact that we're each going to die. Life and death are just two sides of the same coin, right? That we do. I think there's a whole lot we're denying ourselves.
Yeah, it's something that we don't want to talk about, and likely because we haven't had that support of the community like we used to, and when it was out in the open and it was just something else to deal with, and putting the onus on the medical system and giving them the power to say what happens in situations of the end of life. It just kind of robs us, doesn't it, of our own power?
Yes, I think it does. And again, I mean, it isn't simple. It's a confluence of a lot of different factors, how we've ended up here. But once we realize that we've given away our power, then we can take the steps, to claim it back. I think, again, it's just part of our process and our learning, and the way that our science and technology has brought us to these thresholds now of deciding, making different choices about how we approach death, and our own death, of course, but also the death of our loved ones.
Mm-hmm. And so for those of us listening that we're fine, we're perfectly healthy, is this something that is to be thought about at this time of our life, or are we, it seems like we wait until we're given a diagnosis before we actually start doing anything about it? What's the benefit of thinking about it now?
Oh, I think there's so much. Again, I was one of those who was naturally drawn to explore the spiritual realms, and to discover for myself the reality of, or that something that survives death. And I think, there are many, as you say, who are forced into that kind of realization, or having to deal with the reality that, our physical beings are mortal. They don't last forever. And on the other hand, if we don't get those wake-up calls, then we can spend our lives as running from death, not trying to avoid dealing with it. And that can show up in many ways. It can show up as the ways we distract ourselves, from slowing down and thinking about those more spiritual and meaningful topics like death. And it can also show up in more harmful ways as addictions, and and fear, right? You think about the effect that fear has on our bodies and our minds and our emotions. I mean, the energy that takes. So anything that we're doing to avoid dealing with the fact that we will die is taking our precious life energy. It's using it up. And so dealing with and facing the fact that we will die, even if it's, we don't plan to, and we don't want to die, we're not ready to die yet for a long time, but acknowledging that is a fact of life, that we will come to the end at some point. And to prepare for that actually can free up so much energy that otherwise we're spending on other things that are not as meaningful. So becoming and preparing for your own death is one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself. And it's, as you say, some people think, oh, that's morbid. But actually, it's actually a very good use of energy and time, right? To deal with what is. It's a fact. We can deny it all we like. But as far as I know, nobody's avoided death yet, no matter how spiritually evolved they were, right?
Yeah. So you talk about preparing. How would we prepare?
Oh, well, the the ancestors and the ancient ones, you think of the highly evolved spiritual traditions, the Tibetans and the ancient Egyptians, who wrote the book of living and dying. I mean, they left very good descriptions and maps of the other realms, and how to navigate them. And preparing for it, can be as simple at first as acknowledging, that you are going to die. And many people, I'm sure some too, have made preparations like, the concrete physical things that you can do. Have your will prepared. Have a living will for what happens if you are hospitalized, put in the hospital, and you can't speak for yourself. Like making sure there's someone who can advocate for you. Planning your own funeral. Buying, deciding, talking with family and friends about, what you would like to have happen. I have a friend who was actually a student of mine, and she'd been taking a lot of courses with me and things, and then she unexpectedly one day got a diagnosis of terminal cancer and was, told she didn't have a whole lot of time left. Well, one of the first things she did after she called her daughter was to call me and say, I need to come talk to you. And she was aware that I, was trained in the dying work and dying consciously. And she's asked me to take her and her daughter through that whole training. And we did that. I mean, as she was, progressively getting weaker and weaker, and she would be propped up on cushions when I'd arrive at her house for for our next class, and she just went right through all of them, and through all that process, she began to give her daughter instructions, very specific instructions about how she wanted her death to be handled. And she planned the most magnificent and beautiful service and, events at her home. And she, was people came to her home, all kinds of beautiful and very detailed. So, that kind of thing really helps us prepare. But perhaps the most important preparation that we can make is the taking care of the emotional, the psychological kind of an energetic healing that is needed. So one thing we know, and that the ancient teachers have told us, is we want to leave this life as light as possible. It's a lot to carry things across the realm and can stop us from being able to pass peacefully. We want to pass peacefully and light, not carrying burdens and unresolved business from this life. So the work then becomes reviewing your life, looking back over and, seeing the places in your life where you may not have come to closure with events, with people in your life, and to begin the work of tying up those loose ends and the saying goodbye to people, thank you to people, saying, the I love yous or I forgive you. And of course, forgiving ourselves, saying that to ourselves as well. Looking at the regrets, is there anything there that needs attention and needs some more reflection? And so if you have somebody, a loved one who's passing, helping them go through their life and sort through and tie up all the loose ends and do that emotional work actually clears so much heavy energy. That's the burdens, right, that we are all carrying around to some extent or another, that can actually prevent you from leaving as peacefully, right? We all know those stories and those situations of the lingering death, or of the person who hung on, sometimes for days, weeks, months, until a certain person showed up at their bedside. And then that happened to my grandmother, right, with my uncle. She was lingering, and then my uncle came, and he was one who she had some unresolved business with. They'd had words, and she needed to feel at peace. And the next morning she passed after his visit. And we all know those stories, right? So being able to leave. And we don't know when our death is going to be. We don't know if it's going to be tomorrow, right? As we cross the street or something. Who knows? I mean, we all know stories of people. It's like, oh my goodness, like he was so young, or she was, she seemed like everything, she seemed so healthy and well. Like, how could that have happened? So because death, can come in the night, right, and steal us away when we're not ready, then it pays, there's a great benefit to living our lives as, this is where the conscious part comes in, as conscious as possible about the unresolved business that we have with people, and places and situations throughout our lives. So that's the benefit, right? We can leave freer and with more peace in our heart. Makes it much easier. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. It takes a lot of courage if you've spent your entire life, or even, a short while, with things that you might regret. It takes a lot of courage to actually face them. Do we have to do this ourselves?
Well, ultimately, we come into this world alone, and we will leave alone, right? So yes, the ultimate responsibility for doing, our work is our own and not anyone else's. But there's always support. There's always support, and there are, our friends, our loved ones. And lots of other people, helpers, healers, counselors, right, who can help us address those issues if we need the support. But I think first of all, it's deciding, right, making the decision that you'd like to live more consciously and to become more present to what's true for you and real in your life, and what's most meaningful, because ultimately death is the ultimate loss, right? I mean, we've all had experiences of loss. We've lost loved ones, we've lost pets, we've maybe lost jobs, we've lost relationships, friendships, things. But death is the final, it's the ultimate loss of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a big thing, and it's going to come to all of us. But the wisdom is that the best gift that you can give yourself is a good death.
Never heard of that saying before. So when we die and the lights go out, is that it?
Well, I don't think it is, and the ancients. And the ancient teachers say that's not it. We are, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's much evidence now, more and more mounting evidence, that can be documented as, science, and that there is, of course, there is more after death, that ultimately we are a spiritual being having a human experience. And so the evidence that comes from, the thousands and thousands of near-death experiences where people, come to the end, their heart stops and all, function. It's like, seems the lights are out. And then they have this experience, right, of this moving into, and there's the evidence and the stories show that there are more commonalities than there are differences in people's experiences across culture, across time, across history. That point the way to there is something more after death, and that it's quite beautiful. It's quite beautiful. So this is another benefit of doing the work, of beginning to think about and to contemplate, your death. And because if you're curious and you want to explore, there's so much out there, right, to affirm that there is just beauty, that we are actually infinite beings, that we are a great, fields of light of consciousness, and that consciousness survives death and just moves on. It's just a portal, right? We come into this world, into physical form, and this is just another doorway at the end of that life back to spirit. So, my own experience has been, I've had diabetes since I was 9, and I've had multiple what I would call near-death experiences where low blood sugar, and I went into some coma, and I've known that there's something else happening. Like I've had what I call intervention or angelic help, right, of beings that have called me back, and I've had sleep time. I'm a dreamer, and had many experiences in the dream time of traveling out of body and to other realms and dimensions. And so that taught me without a shadow of a doubt from myself that there is something more, that I am more than a physical body, and that other part of me that, that's invisible, but knowing and conscious, travels out of this body. We all do that at night when we sleep, right? We leave. There's always a connection, a silver cord that connects us to our physical body. And that cord, is only broken at death. So that part of us continues to have experiences and to, make that on that other side, continues to make decisions about where we want to go next, what we want to do. We are sovereign, free, limitless beings, and we choose to come into physical form. And lots of evidence for anyone who's ready to explore those realms and that reality, that truth for themselves.
Yeah, my work that I've done with you from your teachings has really taught me that death isn't anything to be feared. I really feel that I'm actually a little bit excited and curious about where I will go to when the time comes. And so it was very freeing to have that change of thought and to free myself from the fear of it, and just take each day and live each day as well as I possibly can, so that my quality of life, rather than being eaten up with the fear, is really enriched, and I'm empowered with the idea that it's up to me what I do with my life. It's my choice what I do in my life, and it's also, from some aspect, my choice when I go. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, that is the ancient teaching, that when you do your spiritual work and awaken spiritually to the fact that you are more than a physical body, and that you just, go back to that spiritual realm at the end of this life, that just frees you up to be here and to make the most and the best of this precious opportunity we have. I believe we choose to keep coming back because this is like such a realm of possibility and beauty and potential. Like, we just can't wait to get back here, right? It's like, okay, how soon can I turn this around? Process that life. There's a book that I read, channelings from Emmanuel, that describe, at the end of life, what happens. This teacher asks at the end of life, and it's the people that meet you on the other side, because you will have agreements with those, either ancestors or beloved soul mates who have agreed and will meet you and greet you and welcome you back, once you get to the other side. And they'll say, so, what was that, life like, what was that experience like? And that, your soul will just say, wow, like it was just like a dream. It passed in a flash. And here I am back again, because it's into that realm of timelessness, of infinity, right? That we move and our spirit moves. And that this life just seems like a brief dream. And so hence comes that teaching that really this physical realm is more of an illusion, like that the reality is the spiritual realm, because it's timeless and infinite. And on that, in that realm, we experience ourselves as a soul on a journey, on a beautiful journey, and having adventures, right? Just like you said. And so when we can have that awareness and bring that, even that possibility, into our human minds, into this reality, it changes everything. It can free us up and keep us from responding to, the fear that gets activated, the fear of, what will people think, or, can I really do that? Maybe I can't, questioning our own abilities and believing in our limitations, as opposed to just letting all that go and just saying, okay, if I could do anything, what would it be? What would bring me the most joy? What would bring me the most satisfaction and fulfillment? Imagine. I think that's the spiritual awakening, and the potential and the opportunity that we're living in right now is of that kind of awakening to a higher purpose, mm-hmm. and to a much wider, expansive view of who we are and what we're doing here.
That's so inspirational. And that's exactly what I wanted to convey in our conversation, because it is actually such a beautiful experience of life, and death is just as beautiful. And so I really think that if we get over that idea of avoiding the conversation and actually just get into some of the work, as you said, of preparing, it really is liberating. And, as you mentioned, if we feel that we can't manage some of these things ourselves, there are people like you and people like me that can help you get to some kind of realization or understanding of what's going on for yourself in your mind and in your heart. And, if anybody needs to reach out, they can reach you at your website, can't they, at AlisonNormore.com?
Yes, for sure. Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I also have a Facebook page. People can message me from there. Alison Normore, PhD, on Facebook, or through Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. Just have to put my name in.
Beautiful. Yeah. Alison, I'm so grateful for your wisdom, and I'm so glad that we had this conversation. Thanks so much for sharing.
You are so welcome. It's always a pleasure for me to share these ideas and to, plant these seeds, right? And we aren't, sometimes we aren't ready. I know I was there. I spent many years, in academia, and it was the persistent calling of my soul that eventually, woke me up into in my dream time, my experiences there, that there was something bigger going on, something greater, which brought me to shamanism and study of Indigenous wisdom traditions and the ancient teachings. So, but it doesn't, it can come anyway. And I think that, right now at this time on the earth, 2020, which is a year none of us will forget, it's also an opportunity and a wake-up call to notice how we're responding, how much fear there is afoot, and the power of this situation that we have on the earth right now is that wake-up call. If it certainly is triggering, even if we never thought of death that much, and didn't think it was something we needed to, as you said at the beginning, because I'm pretty healthy, I got many years left yet, I don't even have to worry about it. That this year has woken us up to that fact, right? If there's a purpose, and there's always a purpose in everything that happens, and a gift. And the gift of this is waking us up to how does death live within each of us? How does death live within you? How does death live within me? And because if we're not comfortable with death, and if we have been in denial and avoiding dealing with our own death, then we are being triggered massively right now. Triggered massively. So this is an opportunity, right? Again, it's another opening to say, well, what's really going on, and what's here for me to look at, so that I can live more fully rather than being gripped by fear and being shutting myself away from everything that matters and from the external world, staying in my home, hiding. What is it I'm hiding from? What has come to find me? My teacher Alberto says, we're being stalked by death, and so rather than living in fear, how can I avoid? Where do I run and hide? How can I turn and face that which is stalking me? Right, and if you've done dream work, that the nightmares, right, of the dream. The nightmares are the ones that really wake us up, right? Where our heart's pounding, we're sweating. It's like, okay, right, there's something here, and there's a gift, right? And as somebody who also teaches dream work and how we work with our dreams and understand the messages that are coming through, I've learned, to pay attention to those, because they're just wake-up calls from our soul that are telling us there's something we need to pay attention to. And it's really hard to ignore those, right? Particularly, they'll recur, they'll keep coming back, right? Until we're ready to face them. And so, so facing down that which, we are most afraid of, because there's a gift there. If you do that work, with whatever that is that's stalking you in your dream or in your waking life, then, there's so much peace, and there's so many rewards for doing that deeper work, to say what's really going on here. Maybe it's it's time to leave that relationship, right? Maybe that relationship has outlived its usefulness. Maybe that job is now just become a drain. It's taking more energy for you to do that particular job, that there's no joy or passion or whatever was there for you. It's not enough anymore, and it's time to leave. Right. So whatever it is, right, this is how death can stalk us and steal our energy if we allow it, or we can, face whatever it is that needs to die, right, in our waking life, so that, we can be born anew. This is the opportunity, right, is to be born anew. In the shamanic tradition, that would be the work of the West. And for me, in my teaching, it's held by the great jaguar, who's the great hunter, right? Has no need for enemies, and teaches us how to be courageous and how to be fearless, and to go into those dark places, into those shadow places that we haven't dared go before, right? Because we were afraid of what we might have to face, or what we might have to decide, or what we have to let go of, so that we can be reborn.
Beautifully said. Well, thank
Mhm.
you so much for sharing your wisdom, and I would like to be able to chat more about some of these ideas and at some other time. So, thank you so much for your time here today.
You're so welcome, Deborah. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thanks so much for listening. If you like what you've heard and want to hear more, please subscribe, leave a comment and a rating, and I promise to send good vibes your way. This episode of Own the Grey is brought to you by I Am. Discover your unique talents, realize your potential, and align to your path. Take the first step to uncover your life purpose by visiting debrajones.ca/courses.